Tim Schaeffer is the executive director of the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. April 5th was the start of trout season. How did it go?
It went great. We had phenomenal weather, throughout Pennsylvania. It was a little bit rainy initially in the morning, but then the sun came out. So really good opening day of trout season. We always like to remind people that opening day is really just the opening day of trout season. Lasts throughout the year and all through the spring. Stock 3.2 million trout on behalf of the anglers.
Some of our viewers may be familiar with the fact that the commission stocks trout every year in state waterways. How much trout did you guys stock this year?
Yeah, so we stocked 3.2 million trout, or we will stock 3.2 million trout before the end of the year. That complements the thousands of miles of great wild trout water that we have in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is blessed with the best of both worlds, from wild brook trout streams, in northern Pennsylvania to south central Pennsylvania, where we wouldn't have trout fishing in, say, in Lancaster County, but for the hatchery system. But we stock 3.2 million trout, and then we have a network of cooperative nurseries, excuse me, a network of sportsmen's clubs that raise about another million trout and stock those into public waters.
How do you decide what specific areas get the trout and how much trout they get?
Yeah, good question. So it's a combination of our biologists working with our waterways conservation officers. The biologists look at water quality, water chemistry, water temperature, where would the trout do well, physically in terms of the biology of the streams. And then our waterways conservation officers make sure that we have public access. We want to stock the trout where people can access them, so make sure that they can safely get to them, make sure it's not posted. And that's something that we remind anglers all the time. The number one reason that we do lose public access is littering. So if you're going to be out trout fishing or really any outdoor recreation throughout the year, make sure you're being ethical and clean up after yourself.
Trib Live newspaper out of Pittsburgh said that fishing season boosts the state's economy. Can you explain how that works?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So from whether it's, when you buy your tackle in your local store, maybe you take a trip to Erie, I live in New Cumberland, in Cumberland County, but people flock to Lake Erie in the summertime to fish for walleye. It's really a multi-billion-dollar industry in Pennsylvania, from the small streams up to the Great Lake.
How long has the Fish and Boat Commission been stocking trout?
Oh my gosh, so our agency came into existence in 1866, and I should know this. I know at least one of our trout hatcheries is over 100 years old, so back into the 1800s for sure.
And how many hatcheries are there across the state?
So we have 13 state fish hatcheries, and 8 of them focus on trout. In addition to the trout hatcheries that the people oftentimes think of, we also stock warm water species. So lots of places in Pennsylvania, you wouldn't catch a muskie, you wouldn't catch a walleye, but for that hatchery system. And with those warm water species, in particular with our muskies, we've been doing phenomenal work. We're raising them to a larger size. When we put them in the water, they're much less prone to predation, and it's still tough to catch a muskie, but not as hard as maybe it used to be.
Why hatch your own fish?
So we stock fish, we raise fish and then stock them in waters that wouldn't otherwise have natural reproduction to sustain a fishery. Sometimes we'll do it in waters where it's a catch and take, sort of like with the trout. We also work a lot with our partners at the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, DCNR, at state park lakes. So think of a lake that has a dam that maybe has to get repaired. You need to draw it down for repairs. Then you need to build the fishery back up. So we'll start with the bait fish, panfish, bass, bluegill, and restore that fishery to where it was before.
What does the health of the fish look like this year?
Health of the fish, they look great. The best compliment I ever got was from a taxidermist one time, and he said, so many people want to bring their trout in to get mounted. Like, they love how they look. So I think if the taxidermist is telling you people want to put their fish on a wall, they must be pretty good.
Your office is working with wildlife agencies, including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and both state governments of New Jersey and New York to protect brook trout. Why are they worth protecting?
Absolutely. They're the state fish, right? And they're you hear the term canary in the coal mine. They really are an indicator of what's happening in the environment, and brook trout need cold, clean water. And in addition to being the state fish, they're a species of concern for our agency. We want to do all we can to protect those strongholds of brook trout habitat in Pennsylvania. If you look up and down the Appalachians, we're right here in the middle of that stronghold. some of the work that we're doing to help to protect the brook trout. I mentioned our partners at DCNR, also with the Pennsylvania Game Commission, Center for Dirt and Gravel Roads at Penn State, focused on how roads are constructed, in rural areas. A big focus on fish passage. Think of a stream that goes under a road in a state forest that may have had a pitched culvert where the water, can't get up, fish can't get up through that passage. Restoring full fish passage and flow underneath those bridges allows the fish to get up to the cold, clean water that they need to survive.
Before we get too far into the conversation, let's take a step back, and can you describe the work and duties of your office for anyone who may not be familiar?
Yeah, so Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, we are an independent administrative agency of about 420 people. We have offices throughout Pennsylvania. The two main offices are in Harrisburg, sort of our administrative headquarters, and then in Bellefonte Center County is our center region offices where our fisheries, hatcheries, engineering staff are based out of. We have fish hatcheries, as we talked about, spread out throughout the Commonwealth, and then we have 6 different regional offices. Education staff are based there, but also our waterways conservation officers. A lot of times when people think of our agency, they think of those WCOs when we call them that are on the water. So about 100 badged officers in the Commonwealth that are part of that 420 complement.
Your office handles fishing licenses. Can you walk us through the process of renewing or purchasing a fishing license?
Yeah, we've made it easier than ever. I mean, everybody's got a cell phone in their pocket these days. You can purchase your license online. Our website is fishandboat.com, real easy to remember. So you can purchase your license online or at, we have hundreds of issuing agents across the Commonwealth, from small mom and pop outdoor shops to the larger retailers. So you can buy it in person or online. Nice thing is these days you can store it on your phone. It used to be you had to wear it on your hat or on your vest. A lot of people still, in fact, I still do that. I still wear it on my vest just so I know where it is. But you don't need to display it anymore. We've made that easier than ever. A couple other of the improvements that we've made is also on the boat registration side. So thanks to a piece of legislation that Senator Devlin Robinson from Allegheny County introduced a couple years ago and passed unanimously, we can now offer calendar year boat registration. And you can renew your boat registration on your phone, online. So you can now do all these transactions at once, buy your fishing license, get your boat registration all at one time.
Why is it important for people to get licensed to fish or licensed to boat? Yeah,
so it's called the North American model of fish and wildlife conservation. It's the user pays, user benefits model. Back around in the 1930s is where it got started, where the country did not have huntable or fishable game or fish populations. And it was acknowledged that even the industry said that we need strong fish and wildlife agencies that can provide boat ramps, that can stock the fish, that can evaluate the health of our smallmouth bass or channel catfish in the river. So the industry realized we needed strong fish and wildlife agencies. So they were supportive of the states enacting fishing licenses, whereby the revenues from those licenses go back into conservation. So we don't receive general fund revenue. We're supported by those fishing licenses, boat registrations. Every nickel that we get, we pump back into the resource. So, we thank the anglers, we thank the boaters for the ability to do what we do on their behalf. We take it really seriously. I say to our staff all the time, if we can't look an angler in the eye and say, we're using your dollar wisely, we shouldn't be doing it. So you've got those license dollars, and then there's also an excise tax that's built into the cost of fishing equipment, boating equipment, motorboat fuel. Those are collected at the federal level and come back also to support the work that we do.
What is your office doing to encourage more people to get their fishing license?
So one is making it easier, right? And like everybody, we're using social media. We have a partner that we work with at the federal level called the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation that gives us a lot of good best practices that we can use. So, using those social media techniques that we can that are at our disposal as efficiently as possible. In Pennsylvania, we work, I mentioned, really closely with our partners at DCNR, with state parks. That's one of the areas where we have a lot of fishing tackle loaner programs. So we have fishing tackle that you can check out for free from a number of those facilities, including some county libraries. But we do fishing programs throughout the year, family fishing programs, learn to kayak, learn to fish from a kayak, you name it. We do as much as we can to introduce people to the sport.
You recently testified at a March meeting of the Senate Game and Fisheries Committee in support of a Senate bill involving abandoned boats. What does that bill say?
Yeah, so that bill, that's House Bill 103. Representative Anita Kulik from Allegheny County introduced that bill. She's the current majority chair of the House Game and Fisheries Committee. And we're seeing in Pennsylvania and throughout the country a problem with abandoned and derelict vessels. And that's the formal definition for these boats. But think of your 1980s, 1990s vintage ski boat, right? A fiberglass boat that doesn't have resale value, doesn't have scrap value. You're not going to see the green John boats from the river laid around because people could sell those for scrap. What this bill does is it beefs up the penalties for improperly disposing these vessels. Unfortunately, right now, if you would tie the boat up somewhere and leave it, it's essentially just a littering penalty. And it's really onerous for local governments to then work with us to get the flow of information, try to track down whose boat it is. So it would increase the penalties, allow for restitution at the local level if removal costs are there, and hopefully be a deterrent for people leaving their boats just out there, to rot away. I will tell you, it's not just sort of the aesthetics of it, but it also puts first responders in jeopardy. So you see a boat floating down the river in the summertime, you think, oh my gosh, call 911, there must have been a boat accident. No, it was just somebody who dumped the thing. So we don't want to put the first responders in harm's way either. May
17th to the 23rd, 2025 is National Safe Boating Week. What is the Fish and Boat Commission doing to recognize this?
Absolutely. So every year, the week before Memorial Day, and that's traditionally been the start of boating season in Pennsylvania, though I will tell you it seems to be starting earlier and earlier every year. During National Safe Boating Week, we share best practices, simple tips for boaters to be adhering to on the water. Number one is wear your life jacket. That's the number one thing you can do to protect yourself and your family. About 80% of the fatalities every year on the water are as a result of people not wearing their life jackets. So trying to get as much messaging out there as possible, but that life jacket wear is the number one thing. Secondly, don't drink and boat. The rules for BUI, boating under the influence, are the same as driving under the influence. Our officers are trained to look for signs of impairment, just like law enforcement officers are on the road when you're driving a car. So if you're going to drink and boat impaired, you're probably going to get caught.
Boat rental rules have also changed. Can you explain what this new change is?
Yeah, we worked with a stakeholder group of boat liveries, as they're called, to make sure that the proper safety equipment and the proper safety messages were getting out to their customers. When COVID hit, and that's the one thing, since pre-COVID, we're back to about the same level in terms of fishing license sales. But the thing that's exploded is unpowered boats, right? I mean, they're just everywhere. Canoes, really, kayaks, really, are the main ones. So we worked with those livery operators and the businesses to make sure that the safety requirements were where they needed to be, make sure that their safety equipment was operable for their customers, and it's all about keeping people safe on the water while they're having fun.
The Fish and Boat Commission also does conservation for fish, amphibians, and reptiles who live in the state. What are some recent work that they've done?
Absolutely. So I want to give thanks to Representative Perry Stambaugh, who's from Perry County. I know he's appeared on your program. He has a bill right now that was introduced to designate the eastern box turtle as the state reptile. One of the things that we do with private landowners is advise on best practices to keep our common species common. So the last thing we want to do is to have a turtle or a snake or a frog get on the endangered species list. Once they get on those lists, they're really hard to get off and they're really costly to deal with. So we work with private landowners to give them tips on how to keep those common species common. But another really exciting thing that we're doing on that non-game side is freshwater mussel propagation. So mussels have been called the liver of the river. They help to clean water. They can filter just an unbelievable amount of sediment out of a waterway in a day. But Pennsylvania is home to a number of critically threatened and endangered federal mussel species as well as state mussel species. So we're actually raising them at our Union City State Fish Hatchery. It's actually now called the Union City Conservation Center in Northwest PA, raising thousands of mussels a year, repopulating them back into the streams of Pennsylvania. So the mussel propagation is real exciting.
Your commission also conducts studies on the amount and type of species of fish in the waterways in Pennsylvania. How do they go about doing this?
So they do that in a couple of ways, but one, they'll do it from a boat. So we'll do electrofishing from the boat. So think of a traditional boat that you may see on the river, a John boat that's got these long arms that go out, and these tentacles that go down that send a pulse of energy through the water. It sort of stuns and attracts the fish in. Then you bring them onto the boat, measure them, take a scale off of them, sample to make sure that they're healthy, monitor what their condition is, and then you put them back in the water and they're fine. So we do it both, on the water from a boat. We also do backpack electrofishing. It's pretty cool to be walking through a trout stream somewhere in the woods with, think of Ghostbusters. Think of that. The pack that they wear sort of looks like that. And there's a wand that goes in the water and sends a pulse of electricity in the water, shocks the fish, and you can measure them. So we do it from boats. We do it on the water. Sometimes we use nets, whatever the occasion necessitates.
Was anything interesting found in any of the recent results of any of the studies they did? Yeah,
so one thing that's really neat is we're starting to see natural reproduction of lake trout in Lake Erie. It's really special. It's been decades since we've seen natural reproduction of lake trout there. So working with our partners in New York State, document what's going on there on their side of the border. We're really excited about that. Yeah, but that was neat, seeing natural reproduction in Lake Erie. We actually have a new research boat that's being constructed right now. This time next year, it will be on the water. We're going to go from having the oldest research vessel in the Great Lakes to the newest research vessel in the Great Lakes. So it'll be the right tool for our team up there to do their job.
Lastly, what community engagement events does the Fish and Boat Commission have planned for this summer?
So again, go to our website, fishandboat.com. You can see the list of activities. We have Learn to Fish programs. We have Learn to Boat programs. We have basic boating programs. If you're gonna operate a motorboat over 25 horsepower or any personal watercraft, you have to think of a driver's test for boating. You need to have that boating safety certificate. So fishing programs, boating programs, all throughout the summer, throughout the year. Check fishandboat.com and you can find all you need to know.
Tim Schaeffer, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks.